you. All right, I don't see Courtney, but we're going to begin. So good evening and welcome to the September 13th meeting of the Falmouth Conservation Commission. Section 40 of Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023 allows for the continuation of remote meetings. As such, this meeting is being held virtually via Zoom video conference. It is also being broadcast on cable channel 15 and I believe streamed online by FCTV. As this meeting is being recorded by Zoom and broadcast by FCTV, please be cognizant of what you say, how you say it, and what can be seen and heard in your background. And I'd like to thank our lone staff member tonight for her attendance. Dedication. We're missing one commissioner tonight. However, we have a quorum, so we're moving forward. And a reminder, you guys, for commenting, I'll call on each of you so we're not tripping over each other, and that all votes done by roll call. To our public participants, at any time during this meeting, you may enter any comments or questions via the chat function. At the appropriate time, they will be read into the record. If you'd like to be heard on a specific hearing, let us know via the chat function. Then at the appropriate time, I will call for public comment. When you are selected, you will be moved into the hearing as a participant. As such, you must have your video enabled, be succinct and respectful of others. Public comments will be limited to 3 minutes each. Regarding RDAs, under a request for determination of applicability, the applicant is asking the Commission to determine if the provisions of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and/or the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw apply to their proposed project. A negative determination is that the provisions of the Act and/or the bylaw do not apply. Therefore, the project may proceed as proposed. However, a positive determination means that the provisions of the Act and/or the bylaw do in fact apply. Therefore, the project would require a notice of intent application. So as an applicant, you kind of want to hear a negative determination. And for the benefit of anyone waiting for a particular hearing tonight, and so that you're not waiting unnecessarily, the following hearings are expected to be continued. 77 Barneck Road, 88 Jewelers Avenue, 169 Walker Street. And for the record, we are going to take an amended order of, an amendment request for 124 North Falmouth Highway out of order. That will be coming up sooner than it shows on the agenda. So that brings us to first up, vote minutes, August 23rd, 2023.
I reviewed the minutes and I move approval as written, pending any comments this evening. Patton.
Bird, second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to accept the minutes of August 23rd. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll vote. Betsy.
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney.
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin.
O'Brien, aye.
Maury.
Harlow Hawks, aye.
Melissa.
Hartog, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. We have accepted the minutes of August 23rd. Thank you, Kristen. Next up, vote minutes August 30, 2023. Anybody?
I'll move approval of the minutes as written with any additions.
I'll second Gladfelter.
All right. We have a motion and multiple seconds to accept the minutes of August 30th. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll vote. Betsy.
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney.
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin.
O'Brien, aye.
Maury.
I wasn't here, abstention.
Okay. Melissa.
Hartog, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
It is almost unanimous. We have accepted the minutes of August 30th. Again, thank you, Kristen. Next up is a request for a continuance. Oh, sorry, my paperwork's falling apart. Request for a continuance for determination of applicability. Lucy Greer, trustee, care of Beth Van Hoover, LCG Realty Trust, 77 Barneck Road, 0 Barneck Road, map and parcel number 49A 060551 002A, and 0 Barneck Road, map parcel 49A 0652 002AA. Woods Hole, Mass, for permission to conduct follow-up invasive species management and restoration. Man, Ms. Bergeron,
The applicant has requested a continuance until October 18th.
Bird, so move.
Gladfelter, second.
all right, we have a motion and a second to continue this request until October 18th. Any questions or comments? We're voting. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Maury,
Arlo Hawks, aye.
Melissa,
Right talk, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. We have continued this request until October 18th. Next up are requests for a continuance under a notice of intent. First request, John H. Munson and Aaron M. Stain Pine, 88 Jewelers Avenue, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to raise, R-A-Z-E, an existing single-family dwelling, garage, and shed, construct a new single-family dwelling with a garage under and porch, and remove the existing cesspools and install a Title V sewage disposal system. Ms. Bergeron,
Yes, the applicant has requested a continuance until September 20th.
Bird, so move.
Right talk, second.
all right. We have a motion and a second to continue this until September 20. Any questions or comments?
I just
All right,
have
we're-
one comment.
Yep.
I went out there before this was continued and it wasn't staked. And I'm hoping that the engineers that are here tonight will start to understand that these things need to get staked for all of us. It's a lot of time and wasted energy and resources going out when they're not staked. Thank you.
Which would require a continuance. So there we go. All right. The motion and the second is to continue this till September 20th. Any other questions or comments? All right, we're voting. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Maury,
Arlo Hawks, aye.
Melissa,
Right talk, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. We have continued this hearing until September 20. Next request for continuance, VJG and Mary Lou De Silva, 169 Walker Street, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to construct a garage addition and install mitigation plantings. Ms. Bergeron,
Yes, the applicant is requesting a continuance until September 27th.
Bird, so move.
Right talk, second.
all right. We have a motion and a second to continue this to September 27th. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll vote. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Maury,
Arlo Hawks, aye.
Melissa,
Right talk, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. We have continued this hearing until September 27th. Next up are requests for determination of applicability. First up, Stephen Marsh, 0 Old Barnstable Road, Falmouth, Mass, to confirm there are no wetland resources located on the locust site. Ms. Bergeron,
Thank you. Mark conducted the site visit and did determine that there are no wetland resources on site. So the staff is recommending a -1 under the state and a -6 under the bylaw. Resource, I don't have to say that part. There are no resource areas.
Bird, so move.
Right
O'Brien,
talk, second.
second.
ooh, competition. That's a first. I've never seen a -1 and a -6. Have to
Doesn't come
frame
up
that one.
often. Yeah,
Yeah,
you're just checking.
yeah. All right, Melissa,
Yeah, a question about
it was found that there was whippoorwill habitat there and, what do you call it? That it might be natural heritage. Does that bring that into our jurisdiction or does that keep it at more of a federal level or something?
I'm not entirely sure. I know that part of the property is currently mapped according to GIS. Once they do a survey, we'll be able to know for sure where that boundary is. I do know when it comes to natural heritage that single family dwellings are exempt, but if this becomes like a development or whatever it is that they're planning, they will likely just have to get in touch with the state and see if there is any of that territory.
Thank you.
All right, anything else? All right, the motion and the second is to accept staff's recommendation. We're voting. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird eye.
Matthews, aye, Kevin,
Brian, I.
Maury,
Carla Hawks Eye.
Melissa,
Frog eye.
Steve.
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have accepted staff's recommendation. Thank you. Next up, Robert Kaplan, 197 Coonamessett Circle, East Falmouth, Mass. For permission to vista prune according to FWR 10.18, 10B. Ms. Bergeron,
Staff recommends a -3 under the state and a -2 under the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Carla
So
Hawks
moved.
Eye.
Patton, so moved.
wow.
I'll second it.
Yeah, you're about the fourth one, so. All right, we have a motion and multiple seconds to accept staff's recommendation. Any questions or comments? All right, we're voting. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird eye.
Matthews, aye, Kevin,
O'Brien, I.
Maury,
Carla Hawks Eye.
Melissa,
Frog eye.
Steve.
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have accepted staff's recommendation. Next up, Michael Shea, 36 High Crest Road, North Falmouth, Mass. For permission to construct 2 additions, replace the deck with a patio, and upgrade the existing sewage disposal system to meet Title V requirements. Ms. Bergeron,
Staff recommends a -2 under the state and bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed, and this project is solely located in an AE flood zone.
thank you.
Bird second. I'll second.
Patton, so moved.
All right, we have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll vote. Betsy,
Felter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird eye.
Matthews, aye, Kevin,
O'Brien, I.
Maury,
Carla Hawks Eye.
Melissa,
Frog eye.
Steve.
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have accepted staff's recommendation. All right, the next one has been previously continued, brings us to David W. and Carla A. Henderson, 0 Gerard Avenue, map and parcel number 47C 08-018-001 and 0 Clinton Avenue, map and parcel number 47C-08-017-009, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to construct a single-family dwelling with attached garage and porches, install a pool with a patio, construct a shed and retaining walls, and install a denitrifying sewage disposal system. Ms. Bergeron,
Staff recommends a -2 under the state and bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed, and this also is solely located in an AE flood zone.
Bird so move.
O'Brien, second.
thank you. All right, we have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Any questions or comments? Melissa,
Yep, since it's in a flood zone, will the, building be elevated? Melissa?
It will be compliant with current building code standards. I don't remember how exactly to describe it, but since it's a new dwelling, it will have to comply.
Great, thank you.
anything else? All right, we're voting. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird eye.
Matthews, aye, Kevin,
O'Brien, I.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks Eye.
Melissa,
Right, Todd,
Steve.
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. We have accepted staff's recommendation. Next up is a continued request for determination of applicability. Rako and Brian Hinrich, 120, 125, and 130 Old Dock Road, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to vista prune according to FWR 10.1810B. Ms. Bergeron,
Yes, staff recommends a +3 under the state and a +4 under the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed, and I can elaborate.
please.
So this is a proposal for a vista prune. In terms of the work discussed on site, it does meet our vista prune regulations. The complexity to this one is that the vista is actually projected over 3 properties and a road. So it's a bit tricky to evaluate when on site. Staff had asked the applicant to provide a survey showing the vista, so we knew exactly where it was. And so the applicant is requesting to the board to approve the project without a survey. Staff would say that if the board is content with that, at least surveying the staking on the site so we know exactly where it is. The staking was placed on site during the site visit and it's approximate. So having it surveyed would give us an exact area of where the vista prune will take place and not something approximate. So like I said, the work itself that we discussed between all the property owners is relatively minor compared to what some vista prunes are. It was just very difficult to evaluate exactly where it will be.
Okay. Courtney,
So if I understand you correctly, you're not suggesting that they file a notice, you're just urging them, you want them to have a full survey done and have it done so everybody knows where everything is.
That was the staff's original recommendation. It might be prudent for the board to continue and look at the site yourselves, or if you feel like you have enough information, the staff would recommend a survey or at least surveyed stakes so that we could get proper photographs and understand precisely which trees and shrubs fall within that 25-foot corridor.
That seems reasonable. I think we should, I'm all for staff's recommendation. So I'll make a
Okay.
motion.
So you're
If that's a
suggesting a
motion, I'd
continuous.
second it.
we don't talk over each other. Kevin,
If Courtney's is a, what do you call it, an order, I would second it.
okay.
Yeah, I'm,
We're not
my
there yet. Hold on, hold
motion
on.
is to accept staff's recommendation with the condition that they do a site survey and have it all areas marked.
Hold,
know.
hold that thought, because we're not taking staff's recommendation in that case. We would be looking for a motion to continue. So let's finish with comments first. Melissa, you had your hand up?
Yeah, thank you, Jamie. I was just looking at Mass Mapper to see exactly which properties are involved with this, and it seems just from looking at maps here that it's kind of an awkward corner. Maybe am I
Well,
misinterpreting the concept, Elisa, that it's sort of going from 120 and sort of across the corner of 130 and across the street to 125? To
Yep.
give
So
us vista prune?
correct.
we want to
It's
see.
if you look on the staff report, there is a
Yeah,
sort of a box on a
Yeah.
GIS photo that shows where it approximately is.
Yeah.
It's one thing when we do a vista prune from someone's backyard and you can measure out 25 feet and it's here to the water.
Yeah.
At this spot, it is at an angle. It's slightly unclear how many trees on 130 are involved, if any. And when looking at 125, there are actually 3 cedars smack dab in the middle of the vista, which are obviously not going to be touched in any capacity, but it's slightly difficult to tell from the deck at 130 which trees along the coast behind those cedars are actually involved. We did go out there and the stakes were put approximately where they should be, and we talked about 3 trees in particular. It very well could be slightly shifted.
Mhm. Okay, but you folks recommended a positive, so that would
Yeah,
suggest
at a
That-
you want
risk
an
of not
NOI.
putting a negative, I would suggest, as Jen always says, don't make a decision in a vacuum and perhaps
Yeah.
just continue it and come to your own conclusion.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Betsy,
Can I suggest we just continue it for 2 weeks and talk to the people and say that within the next week, they have to have the area staked so that we could visit it?
With surveyed stakes, or have them go out and measure it
It
exactly?
should be surveyed.
well,
Well, they should put survey stakes in, and if it's acceptable to us, they have to provide a survey of that. Right?
Can you say that again?
it should be
The answer
surveyed.
is yes,
It should be an
surveys,
Yeah.
official
surveys-
request.
survey stakes.
Yeah. It sounds to me like it's just too broad. It's like, well, we kind of want it here. So I'm thinking that Alyssa, what you guys would be looking for is something pretty specific.
Yeah, when I got on site, there were minimal stakes in, and then the vista shifted while I was doing my site visit. So it was a little planned in the moment, and everyone was still sort of talking about it in the moment.
Yeah.
So it wasn't as prepared as it could have been and clear as it could have been.
Hold on, everyone. Yeah, it needs to be pretty specific. Courtney, something new?
No, I just was gonna say, they need to get it surveyed and staked by a surveyor and that may take more than 2 weeks. Let's give them 2 weeks, but they probably will need more to get the survey done.
Melissa?
Yeah, a surveyed stake out of the, or staking of the Vista pruning would be better for posterity's effect too, for if any of the properties change hands in the future, then there'll be official surveys and an official delineation. I think it's a prudent way to go.
Yeah, especially considering it's 3 separate properties, so. All right, so what we'd be looking for, correct me if I'm wrong, Alyssa, is we want a motion and a second to continue this for 2 weeks and for staff to communicate to the applicant that we want it needs to be staked. And then Alyssa, if you guys, once it's staked, if you're comfortable with what you see, I don't want to speak for everybody, but I think that would suffice. And then we can decide if and or if it's staked, that you could send a note, we could go look at it if we wanted to.
Okay,
So is
sure.
that clear to everyone? Does that make
Mhm.
sense? So we're not giving them a positive, we're not shutting them down. We're just want more information.
So I'll make a motion to continue this hearing until, what month are we? September 27th.
Bird second.
Is this a hearing?
No, it's an
Yeah.
RDA.
It's, yeah,
So we're continuing it as opposed to just telling them they can't do it. So this gives all concerned an opportunity to take a look at it specifically. So we have a motion and a second to continue this till September 27. Everybody good with that? Any questions or comments? We're voting on the continuance. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird eye.
Matthews, aye, Kevin,
O'Brien, I.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks eye.
Melissa,
right, guy.
Steve. It is unanimous. We have continued this until September 27. Now, as I mentioned, we're going to take one thing out of order, but I'm going to read the legalese for the request for hearings under notice of intent so that we're covered at all aspects. So, all hearings of the Falmouth Conservation Commission are held simultaneously under the authorities of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw. Although a single decision of the commission is issued, it represents a separate decision under each authority. As a reminder, public commenting is limited to 3 minutes. So I encourage you to stay within the purview of this board, which are the rules and regulations of the Wetlands Protection Act and the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw, and how they pertain to a particular application. The chair reserves the right to stop any commenting that is disparaging or inconsequential to the hearing. So first up in our modified agenda is a request to amend an existing order of conditions. J. Rao, 124 North Falmouth Highway, Falmouth, Mass. Request to amend the order of conditions for Mass DEP number 25-4706 to reduce the size of a previously approved dock. Ms. Bergeron.
Thank you. I promoted Mike Berselli to present his project.
Excellent. Mr. Borselli, you're up, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the courtesy of taking me out of order. With your permission, I'd like to share my screen.
Yes, sir.
I represent the applicant Jay Rao, who owns a property at 124 West Falmouth Highway. It has frontage on Wing Pond. You have reviewed this project on 2 occasions, once for the reconstruction of an existing house and once for permission to build a proposed dock that would be used for passive recreational purposes, including kayaks, canoes, and just swim as a swim platform. The plan before you is what you approved. It was proposed to replace an existing dock, which is shown here faintly in the background. It proposed to build an 8x8 landing, a new stairway, and a new series of fixed pier sections, lightweight, so it could be removed if necessary. An order of conditions was issued for this in February of 2022. The applicant solicited prices for the construction, and the cost is rather excessive. So he has requested an amendment, ironically, to make the structure smaller, which I'll now share with you. You can still see, for reference, the in the background the existing dock. There's one, if you've been to the site, you would have noticed this one section at the very bottom is in a state of disrepair and it's unsafe. That would be removed. The prior project included rebuilding these stairs, and they're serviceable. So instead, he's going to continue to use these stairs and just build off this platform at the bottom with a much smaller dock that would measure 8 foot 3 inches by 12, and there'd be a small 4 foot by 10 foot section. The platform at the top had been proposed to be enlarged and rebuilt. He's going to keep that as it is. So if you look at this drawing, and if you make reference to these water depths out here for reference, just to see the difference in length, the originally approved one almost projects out to there, which I'll share with you. It was 42 feet from shore, and the new concept is to only project out 15 feet from shore. There's no motorized watercraft allowed on Wing Pond. This is simply to sit on, swim off of, fish off of, launch a kayak off of. It's significantly smaller than what you approved. And with that, I'll answer any questions.
Thanks, Mike. Ms. Bergeron.
Thank you. As Mike said, this is an amendment request. The proposed dock is much smaller and some of the components aren't even being reconstructed anymore. So staff does not have any questions or comments at this time.
All right. But for the record, Mike, this doesn't allow you to make another one grow bigger.
That's fine.
Kidding. All right. Enough humor.
I get it. Now I get it.
That's
No
That's it.
comments. No comments.
Courtney.
No comments.
No comments.
Melissa,
No questions or comments.
Steve?
No comments, sir.
All right. Ms. Bergeron, is there anything in the public chat function, please?
There is nothing in the public chat and there are no hands raised.
I'll make a motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement.
Bird
Gladfelter.
second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to close the hearing. Any other questions or comments? All right, we're voting to close the hearing. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird eye.
Matthews, aye, Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Melissa,
Front guy.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. We have closed this hearing. Thank you, Mr. Borselli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, commissioners. And again, thank you for the courtesy of taking me out of order. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Night, Mike.
Good night.
All right, that brings us back to request for hearing under notice of intent. I already read the legalese. The first one, 88 Jewelers, had been previously continued. That brings us to Richard M. Dupee, 107 Adamancet Road, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to remove fill in an unpermitted patio and to restore the area. Ms. Bergeron.
Thank you. I've permitted Tom Bunker to present his project.
Excellent. Mr. Bunker, you're up, sir.
I am muted. Okay. For the record, my name is Tom Bunker with BSS Design, and we prepared this plan. And I'll start with a little joke of my own. You told Mike he couldn't use that reduction to make another one bigger, but since I'm the one that let him step in line, maybe I can use that reduction for one of my projects. Anyway.
No.
No, okay. Just thought I'd ask. This is for 107 Adamancet, and so this project too is reducing coverage, although it's unpermitted coverage. I will put my screen up, if I may.
Absolutely.
Find the drawing here. There we go. This is at 107 Adamancet. That area there is pretty much small cottages along the frontage of Coonamessett Pond in this area, and this is one in the background of this. You can see, if I can get over to where the panning is. Let's see. There it goes. Anyway, in the background, there's an outline of the existing cottage, and the owner wants to build a larger house. But in the past, at some time, this was there it is there. For quite some time, and we did a survey quite some years ago, and there was no patio or any disturbance in this zone, which is on the bank down toward Coonamessett Pond. And we'd had LEC flag the wetlands and located the edge of the pond in this location, and determined that this work falls within the zone A of the wetland bordering Coonamessett Pond, which is in a zone 2 wellhead protection area, and that a zone A of such a resource area is 100 feet deep, and it's drawn in this location right here. And so we have to remove all of this disturbance and replant it before hoping to get a building permit for the house. And the house is so limit of work, it's 14 feet from the limit of work, and the limit of work is 1 foot landward of the zone A. So, it's not encroaching within the 10 feet. It's 14 feet, but I can show you. I've done some drawing and calculations here, so pretty much the entire, the zone A is a little hard to see on this. I can pull up some of the pictures, but the zone A of the wetland and the zone B of the pond are pretty much the same running through here. There's the zone A runs right through here. And so what's being proposed to do is we have to remove all of this. There's a little bit of pressure treated wood retaining wall on here. There's about 1 to 2.5 feet of fill, depending on the location along here, because this is there is what we call the path, but you've been out there, is kind of it's an old cartway which runs along here and along this way, which has been there for a long time. And so if you've been along there, you see this path itself has basically no vegetation in it, but trees have grown up on both sides. So the proposal here is to remove all of that disturbance and scrape it down to the grade which was there before, that pathway grade, which is about 1 to 2 feet below the surface that's there now, and so remove some other stone steps, whatever else is there, and some non-native shrubs and grasses are in this area also. So that will all come out, and the proposal, what I had was some trees along there. Put some trees back along the edge. It is well wooded. As Alyssa pointed out in the staff report, I had trees and shrubs, and the staff report suggested replacing instead of these trees, to put more shrubs and possibly space them down the hill. It's a little difficult. I mean, it's not difficult to plant shrubs down a hill, but it'd be a little difficult to say exactly where. I don't know if we could, agree to this, hopefully close the hearing, and the shrubs can be placed with staff down there. This is at least partly a beech forest, and beech forests always have very little understory in them. But there are other areas where there's some oaks and pines. So I think it would be good to, rather than try to put it on a plan, to meet with staff out there to determine where the planting will be exactly. I hope we could possibly close the hearing and approve it, on the condition that we do this with staff to determine exactly where the planting will be. So that's the proposal. I will take this down and we can talk.
Thanks, Tom. Ms. Bergeron.
Thank you. Tom, apologies if you mentioned this already. Is there an inland bank label that should be on the plan?
No, it's not labeled.
No.
I'll put that on.
Okay,
Edge
excellent.
of
Thank
pond,
you.
inland bank. I think it's
I
yeah.
figured they were synonymous. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for having that zone A staked and sending me the photos. And yes, as Tom mentioned, one of my comments on here was potentially not planting the trees, or maybe just some of them. The backyard area is very well wooded. Those trees would be going fairly close to the home and maybe in their future designated view. I wondered if the understory could simply benefit from more shrubs, not necessarily planted in any particular capacity, but just augmenting it. When I was walking in the area, there were some small old tree stumps really no understory sort of maintained areas for the bird feeders. And I wonder if just adding some more shrubs in there, giving it a little more plant diversity could help augment the area. But that's just my opinion. So we can leave that to the board. Thank you.
All right. Commissioner comments. Courtney,
No comments.
Kevin,
Alyssa sounds like she has a good idea.
yes, she does. Maury,
I just wanted to know if the new septic has already been installed.
Nothing has been installed for this project.
I just want to make sure. All right, because it's in a Mass DEP designated nitrogen sensitive area, and you might want to think about a D-Nite, especially with the new regs coming in. And it is in a sensitive area.
I think generally, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree. The recommendation
I'm just
from the,
recommending it.
Yeah.
And I think that staff's recommendation of the trees will probably impinge upon the house and the corridor, and the habitat value would be better with more woody shrubs. And other than that, and you should put the scale for the main plan. I think you have it for the inset.
oh,
I know it's 1:20, but just put it on there maybe. Other than that, thank you.
Melissa,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question. When I was walking around the property, I noticed that, down below the stone patio, there seemed to be quite a bit of clearing that's gone on over the years. There are lots of sort of little stumps of what would have been trees at one point with brushy things growing out of it. And it made me wonder if the applicants are going to want a view corridor as part of their opening there. So there's no sign of a view corridor here, and it certainly looks like they have a bit of a view corridor to the point where they even eliminated trees and stuff to.
there, I'm sure they would want that. I could say, and I think typically we'd go out. I mean, I could have put it on here, but it would typically determine exactly, let's say if they're standing on the deck that's proposed on the house, and to determine where that corridor would be with staff, and then get the application at that time.
Okay, so they'll come back with another application, because I was also wondering about that shed, if it was permitted. But it sounds like the understory rehabilitation is a good idea too, and it's beautiful spot out there. I felt like I was in Lake Country in New Hampshire,
Yeah.
back there looking for cabins. But other than that, no, thanks for restoring it.
excellent. Steve,
No, thanks. The site is very wooded. I think the replacement with bushes is correct. I don't have any other questions. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Melissa.
Betsy,
No questions or comments. Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Jamie.
all right.
Excuse me, Jamie,
Yes,
may I add one
Yes.
question or comment? I noticed on your, I know it's the neighboring property, but down below it says dirt driveway to number 91 Adams. That looks like a highly graveled driveway. Just a note to staff that I don't know if.
We've been out there. We've had
Okay.
another case out there.
Okay, great, thanks.
all right. Ms. Bergeron, is there anything in the public chat function, please?
Nothing in the public chat and no hands raised.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement.
Third, second.
Tom and staff can confer about places and species and numbers.
All
Will do.
right, we have a motion and a second to close the hearing. Are there any other questions or comments? All right, we're voting to close the hearing. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird eye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Maury,
Harlow Hawks Eye.
Melissa,
Right, guy.
Steve.
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have closed the hearing. Thank you, Mr. Bunker.
Thank you all and good night.
Night,
No.
Tom.
Right, Tom.
All right, next up, Brian Storms, 0 Little Neck Bars Road, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to reconstruct a licensed common pier. Ms. Bergeron.
Thank you. There's a couple representatives from Cape and Island here. Can Mark or Raul raise their hand? Thank you, Raul. I am promoting Raul Lizardi to present his project.
Excellent. Good evening, Raul. You're up, sir.
Good evening. For the record, Raul Lizardi from Cape and Islands Engineering, representing the applicant, Brian Storms, on this application for his project to reconstruct the existing pier. Just a little brief of history before I start sharing and reviewing the project. This is a property that is owned by a separate entity than the entity that is the applicant. The applicant is Brian Storms. The property owners are Scott and Kate Anderson. There is a signed consent from the owners for this project to move forward for this application. The pier was approved back in 2001 under an order of conditions, and it was issued a license. The applicant now wants to rebuild it and change some of the dimensions of the pier. This is a common pier. It's not serving just one resident at the property. So with your permission, I will share my screen.
Yes, sir.
So the property is in West Falmouth, specifically heading towards Chappaquiddick Island. It's in West Falmouth Harbor. There is a little portion of West Falmouth Harbor that is south of the bridge on Chappaquiddick Road. And the property is just south on the south edges or south shores of that pond. The little inlet here is called Harbor Head, and that's where the project is located. Here's a couple of pictures of what the pier exists, how the pier exists today. It is a low profile pier. It is timber construction and is one of those piers that is a mono layout pile system. What that means is that there is one pile down the middle of the pier, and with that we have different timber elements that connect the rest of the structure and the platform to walk above it. What is happening is that the users of the pier, as a fixed pier at the terminal end at this location, find themselves too high above the boats that they want to access or the kayaks or canoes that they want to launch. This is close to about 3 foot 5 inches of tidal range, and this platform is roughly at elevation 5, and the low water gets to elevation -2. So there's a good range of the tide period that they can't really access their crafts. So what they had done temporarily was they installed a float and a ramp at the terminal section, and staff noticed that this was done without permits. And last year, the users of the pier were informed about it, and they discontinued the installation of the float and the ramp. What is being proposed is to completely remove the existing structure. In its place, we propose to do a new structure in different materials and also different arrangement for the piling configuration. We're going to completely do away with the monopile layout system. One of the things they noticed at the site is that over the past 20 years, the winter has lifted some of the piles. And for those who went to the site and walked the pier, there's a few sections of the pier that are raised. That was not intentional. That was just from the ice lifting the piles out of the water. So the project does not get any further than the permit. So the location of the end for the pier will be the same. What we're proposing to do is this terminal section to drop it about 2 feet from the current elevation. In addition to that, there are 2 existing piles installed in the marsh. The project proposes to span the whole marsh with what they call a pedestrian walkway. It's one of those aluminum walkways similar to a ramp to access a float, except that this is a longer span to completely span over the marsh. So what we're proposing is a pair of piles at this location and a pair of piles beyond mean low water to span and install that elevated walkway. The structure does extend further landward in this location, and I'll jump over to the profile view to explain the reasons why. So right now, the existing pier begins very shallow, and it kind of continues at elevation 4 all the way, 4.5 or so, all the way to the end. What we propose to do is provide a platform that's at elevation 8. And to access that platform, we have stairs that expand landward from the current terminal point of the existing pier. This expansion landward is roughly 24 square feet of additional square footage. However, this 41.5-foot section that we're spanning with the aluminum structure, we're making it a 3-foot wide elevated walkway compared to the existing 4-foot wide. So we actually reduce footprint overall for this project. At the end of this bridge, if we want to call it that way, we have another platform, elevation 3.8, and a couple of steps to get down to the final level at 2.8. So 2.8 is the intended reach for this new pier. This section at the end will be constructed of timber. All the piles are going to be vinyl coated. Something that we're changing is, instead of proposing a 15-foot penetration for the piles, we're going for an additional 5 feet of 20. That way we have more grab from the natural soils and kind of minimize the potential for lifting during the winter. This project will be going for, as I understand, a new license because of the change of materials and the change of layout of the pile system. It could technically go for a minor modification since we're not changing more than 10% of the footprint. But given that the license has already run 20 years of the 30-year permit, it's probably more recommended to just file a new Chapter 91 license. I'll stop sharing, and if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Thanks, Raul. Ms. Bergeron.
Thank you. Raul, I know that you sent me an email today, but I didn't get a chance to read it. Could you address our staff comments? I know that it's a shared dock. Is there going to be a third mooring field, or is it just 2 boats at a time will be stored on it?
So yes, I'll go back to sharing my screen.
Thank you.
So one of the questions from the staff report, we have proposed 2 mooring fields along the sides of the pier. And one of the questions was whether there was going to be a third mooring field at this location. There is not. At that location, the space is not of enough size to have something docked there. It will prevent anything from moving out from these 2 locations. So no, it's just the 2 mooring fields. The other question was the aluminum elevated section, whether it was going to be through flow. We're not proposing through flow. This is a prefabricated aluminum structure. Everything is aluminum, similar to ramps. The concerning being, as I understand, light penetration. This arrangement, if we go to the full plan, this is the north arrow. This pier is fairly close to a true north alignment, and it's also elevated to be 1.5 times the width of the 3-foot elevated walkway. above the marsh. So light penetration underneath for the marsh, it's much better with this design than it's currently with the existing site. So we believe that a true prefabricated aluminum gangway to span this 42 feet is appropriate for this project. Those were the two comments from staff report that I recall.
Thank you, Raul. So I don't disagree. Definitely the new configuration will likely help the salt marsh over there, but commissioners who have been here longer than I have, isn't it typical that if a dock is being completely reconstructed, it is brought up to current standards? It would need through flow over the salt marsh. I talked to Mark today and he agreed, but I wasn't able to speak with Jen. I can certainly reread the regulations again, but that's my understanding. I have
No, I
seen
think
through
you understand that correct, except what Raul said about raising it for light penetration from the sides. You could argue that that negates the need for the penetrating. That's my opinion.
Raul.
Yeah, and something is that if we take away the horizontal aluminum planks for the walking surface on this prefab structure, I don't know if they can build it. I don't know if this is all integral to this spans. One of the things that this spans can be done is because of lightweight, but through flow, it's a composite material. You cannot weld composite material to aluminum.
Okay. I'm honestly not sure how to evaluate which has more light penetration, your design or a through flow. So my lack of experience is showing here. I'll have to, Raul, just chat with Jen and the commission and look at the regulations. If something is different, we might just have to condition something, or we can continue until I can get more information on that. But that's my only comment for the moment. Thank you. Yeah.
If I could add something to that, this is something similar that was approved a few years ago. I believe it was 3 years ago, and the pier was built last year, 2022, for a longer span with a similar product. Forgot the address now, but it was a 60-foot span with this same type of aluminum elevated walkway.
Okay.
I think the elevation is key to that argument. The way he has it elevated versus flat. But just to ask, Raul, I mean, maybe it's not a question for you, but your supplier, but they must make a flow-through aluminum product. I would think. I mean,
yeah, I wouldn't know. The ones that I've seen,
Oh.
everything is aluminum.
Yeah, and I would think that would lend to the structural integrity also. So there's probably a reason for that. But all right, you good for the moment, Alyssa? Okay, commissioner comments, Kevin.
I have no comments at the question at present time, but I must admit I have my doubts.
All right, Maury.
I guess one of my questions with the flow through is they do make an extruded aluminum, and that could set into the frame of that, so you would still have the lightweight. You'd get the light penetration. It's just something I think maybe you should investigate a little bit, because that's a big section. So the lighter it has to be strong, but it has to be light to move it, in and out. Is it going to stay there year round?
So yes, this structure is a year-round structure. But yeah, to Maury's response, there is aluminum grating, and if it's an aluminum grating, that could be welded to a structure such as this. And it's not the same product. Through flow is a composite, but there is aluminum grating that we can reach out to the manufacturer to specify that the walking surface be the aluminum grating instead of the aluminum planks.
Right. So the extruded aluminum can be welded onto the frame.
Right, so long as it's the same
aluminum
material.
frame. Yeah, yeah. That I think might solve everybody's concerns. The fiberglass pilings I'm happy about. And the only other thing, how are you getting it? You're gonna have a barge get in there underneath the the Checkpoint Bridge. Is the gym pole gonna be able to come down, and how are you getting under there?
So yes, we reached out to one of the marine contractors, and they do have access into this cove. They have to work with the tides to get underneath the bridge. This aluminum structure gets delivered because it is manufactured, I believe, here in Marston's Mills.
Well, I figured you'd take it all under the bridge in a barge. And that it's just that you're going roughly 20 foot to refusal. So those are pretty big pilings, and I just want to make sure you can get in there and not be grounded, because you only have about what? And how are you doing the upland ones?
So yeah, there is from the upland, the edge of the road, there's not that far of a reach for the first two piles. And since we're spanning the 40 feet of the marsh, the other ones are reachable from the water. But yes, we have to work around the high tide.
Yep, because you only have 0.1 feet of water there.
Yep.
All right, yeah, I mean, it's going to be a really short working period. All right, so other than that, it's an improvement to the resources, and I have noticed over the years that those monopiles weren't driven to refusal, I don't think, and they were getting lifted with the cross members during ice flow. So this was an
Yes.
improvement. Thank you.
Something added to the vinyl. The wooden piles provide more friction, so the ice actually grabs a hold better on timber.
From wood. Yeah.
When it's vinyl coated, it's kind of more loosely,
Right.
and there's not as much friction.
Yeah, slippery. Is it the Pearson pilings?
These are vinyl coated. The Pearsons are composite,
Are they?
and sometimes they do come with some inside, but no, these are just vinyl coated.
Okay, thank you.
Melissa?
Thank you, Jamie. Hi, Raul. Questions. I agree with what Maury said about the aluminum decking. I know that I really would like to see if it's not, you know, the through flow actual slats, but you know, something with air and light, you know, with the roundish holes, so that light gets through. I know it's not conducive to bare feet, but it is more conducive to a healthy marsh, and so I think that should definitely take precedence. I had the same questions that the staff comments had. I'm wondering it's 3 properties are going to benefit from this. You said that you had a letter from the owner of the property, who I guess is a 4th property involved. We don't have that in our packet. I don't know if it's actually relevant, but the 3 properties that are benefiting, is that sort of part of the public benefit component of this doc? Is that why it's relevant here?
So the original pier that exists today was approved as a common pier for 3 properties. The 3 properties that are benefiting from this is 111, 117, and 125 Little Neck Bars Road. That was from the original approvals for the pier. That's not changing. The signature of the consent from the property owner is included in the notice of intent application, just following one of the first pages on the forms.
Yeah, I guess I didn't see it there.
And
But,
the signature from the applicant, who is Brian Storms.
Storms, yeah.
And yes, if the board conditions the walking surface, please do not use the term through flow. Through flow is a specific manufacturer, and just call it out grading, because grading is the way to go. Or 50% light penetrating surface or something.
Yes, I'd like to
that.
see light penetrating surface there, so that the marsh can grow properly. So then I guess I'm curious as to a spot for the third beneficiary to use the pier if there's only two places for boats to tie up. That strikes me as odd. You mentioned that there was a 60-foot span though, that was approved somewhere. It's a similar type of prefab decking. Was that in Falmouth that you're thinking of, or is that another town? Because if it's another town, it's irrelevant.
So
But
yes, it was in
it's-
Falmouth. I know it was part of my response to Elisa's staff comment. You 290 Acapesket is the one that was installed
Oh,
last
yeah.
year.
Okay. Thank you. We can look
If
at
you
that
like, I
for
can share a
reference.
few pictures of that project, but yeah, it's a pretty long one.
Not right now, but that's good to know. It's a reference to that. Okay, because I guess my question is that if it's prefab, and it's made by the Landersea Marine Fabrication, the Cape Cod Welding folks, they've obviously made them before to state standards, which allows light to flow through. So I think you could probably work on getting an aluminum gangway that allows light to flow through. Because if they're making them, then they're making them for every town around here, not just Falmouth. And I had an issue with the, I don't know if this is gonna throw everything off. Your, the state or the Commonwealth's permit for the standard waterways licensing conditions. It says it's not an official copy, not an official copy. It actually says on the bottom of the first page, it says in and over the waters of Falmouth Harbor in the town of Falmouth. This is actually West Falmouth Harbor. I don't know if that could be a problem with the state. You might want to correct that.
One more reason for filing a new notice, a new chapter 91.
No, this is
Right.
yeah, okay. Yeah, so you're gonna want to fix that. But I'm skeptical about the solid planking on the gangway. And yeah, good luck getting the barge under the bridge. Okay, I think that was it for my questions. Yeah.
All right.
Thanks.
Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Between Maury and yourself, I had the answers to my questions. Thank you.
All right. Betsy?
Thanks, Jamie. Raul, did you send this to DMF? Do we have any comments from DMF?
It was sent to DMF. I do have the email when it was sent, but I don't have anything responding back.
Okay, so I just want to point out, I know we haven't looked at these regulations for a while, but I'd just like to remind people that this is what it says in the regulations. Except for floating portions of the dock, the decking surface shall not reduce the normal ambient lighting, that is sunlight, by more than 50%. So they don't specifically say flow through. We usually do flow through because that's what most of the docks, that's a common material that can be used, but it doesn't specify flow through. As you said, Raul, you don't want flow through is to put in the order of conditions.
Right.
That's
all, Jamie.
All right. Just for the record, I think we've been using, flow through as really a generic term about light penetrating. So, I think it's perfectly acceptable that we won't use the term flow through if it's, a trademarked item or something. But Raul, I think we're on the same page. We're looking for a perforated surface. So let's call it that. But again, we throw around that term flow through. We don't necessarily mean that product per se, just the results of it. So just for clarification, we beat that to death. So let's let it go. Courtney?
With regard to the decking, is it that grill pattern that's like 1 inch by 2 inches and then the it's about maybe an inch thick, 1.25 inches thick. It's the kind of stuff you see on city streets and, you know, covering over large areas. Is that similar product? For those that really are dated, I can think of that great movie with Marilyn Monroe from the 1950s, Some Like It Hot, and she was standing on one of those grates with her dress off over the top of her head. That's the
Oh,
kind
we
of
digress.
thinking about without getting off color. Is that the
Point
sort
taken.
of grate you're talking about?
Similar.
Okay. And the second question I have is, the aluminum, in that environment, with the salt air is gonna be easily degraded. Is that a kind of a, do you plan to coat this thing with something like powder coating or anything to preserve it?
That's something that we probably have to reach out to the manufacturer and see what kind of a treatment could be given to extend the life of that aluminum. I really don't know the specifics of what they do,
Yeah.
but they do
That would be a
manufacture
concern.
products. They do manufacture products for marine applications, so they do this often. So they must have something for extending the life.
I mean, that's more your issue than it is ours. As long as it meets our standard, I guess it can fall apart in 5 years and you can replace it. The second question I have, which also relates to this, you're talking about vinyl coated pilings, right? So I assume the guts of the piling are some sort of pressure treated wood, or is that correct?
So yes, the wood inside the vinyl is pressure treated and is completely encapsulated with vinyl.
And so what happens to the wood when somebody screws bolts through the vinyl?
It's the
Silicone.
same.
Yeah, I mean, in other words, yeah, I'm concerned about that as a end product, again, for longevity. Once the moisture gets inside, it's trapped. Is that just gonna rot the pile? I don't know. That's a concern I have. It doesn't have anything to do with this permit. Other than that, I have no other questions.
All right. Ms. Bergeron, is there anything in the public chat function, please?
There is nothing in the public chat. There are no hands raised, and I just had one comment to follow up. Raul, you said you mentioned you mailed this to DMF. If we do have any comments, we'll just put those in the order. Thank you.
Agree.
So I'll make a motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement.
Bird second.
Mark second.
All right. We have a motion in multiple seconds to close the hearing. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we're going to vote to close the hearing. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird eye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Maury,
Arlo Hawks eye.
Melissa,
Fred Tuck,
Steve.
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. We have closed this hearing. Thank you, Raul.
Thank you.
Raul, are you going back in attendees?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, next up are continued requests for hearing under notice of intent. First up, Edgar J. and Rosemary R. McLaughlin, 8 Grassmere Drive, Falmouth, Mass., for permission to reconstruct a retaining wall, replace stairs, and to install a concrete pad. For after-the-fact permission to construct a patio, retaining wall, and steps, and to install mitigation plantings. Ms. Bergeron.
Thank you. I'm promoting Mark Dibb up to present the changes to his project.
All right, and Melissa is not on this quorum. Mr. Dibb, you're up, sir.
Hi, good evening. For the record, Mark Dibb with Cape and Islands Engineering on behalf of the applicant, Rosemary McLaughlin for 8 Grassmere Drive. This is a continued hearing. With your permission, I'd like to share my screen.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so at the initial hearing, we presented the project. The main focus of the project originally was this replacing the failing timber retaining wall. And then we identified some other areas on the site that had been worked in without permit. And so we submitted a notice of intent that required mitigation for the work that was being performed. We had originally placed the mitigation below that wall that is in the field based on some winter type information we had, photographs. It turned out that was a rather vegetated area. So we were asked to relocate the mitigation. So we have put it more in the upland area in the A zones, in existing lawn areas or developed areas that are not currently vegetated areas. So the main revision to this plan as a result of the last hearing is this new mitigation area. One other minor comment that we've added to this plan is this existing timber border and an AC unit at this end of the building. And that is my presentation for tonight, and would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Bergeron.
Thank you. All of staff's questions were answered, so I have nothing else at the moment. Thank you.
All right. Commissioner comments or questions? Maury.
I just had one question. So the area below the wall to the pond will just be allowed to revegetate? You're not going to maintain it anymore?
I did have a small strip. I'm gonna just share the screen again, if that's okay.
Yep.
We do want to, I believe it was 3 feet wide, just to be able to continue to observe the wall in this area. But that would be it for everything else would be still revegetating naturally.
Okay, because it just really doesn't make it clear on the plan. So that's good. Thank you.
Good?
Good.
All right. Steve.
Mark, thank you for following up on the request from staff from the last meeting. I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
All right. Betsy.
Mark, I just wanted to tell you, this plan was so nice and crisp and clear as opposed to when we started. I know you guys are trying different things out, but this was particularly clear coming back in, and I appreciate that.
Courtney.
I'll echo Betsy's comments. Job well done. Thank you.
All right. Kevin.
No questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
All right. Ms. Bergeron, are there any anything in the public chat function, please?
Nothing in the public chat, and oh, we do have a hand raised. Mr. Reef, I will be promoting you to a panelist. And you can address the board. Please turn on your audio and video.
Can everybody hear me?
We can hear
Yes,
you.
you
Do
have
you happen
video?
to have a yep?
Do you have video?
Yes, I do.
There you go.
Okay.
You're up, sir.
Sorry, I'm joining late. Just got back from a camping trip and I had a neighbor come over and he wanted me to talk about 0 Old Barnstable Road parcel. And I didn't know if that was on the agenda tonight.
Yep, we're beyond that. We're on 8 Grassmere Drive. Do you have anything for 8 Grassmere Drive?
No, I don't, sir. I'm sorry I'm late, but I
Not
wanted
at
to
all.
talk about 0 Old Barnstable Road, but I guess time has passed.
Yep, I
It
can put a
has.
note in the chat function for you, so I'll bring you back to panelist and I'll let you know how that hearing went.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Alyssa, do you see anything else in the public chat function?
No.
I'll
Excellent.
make a motion
Thank
to
you.
close the hearing and take it under advisement.
Bird second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to close the hearing. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we're going to vote to close the hearing. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, I.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks eye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous with this quorum. We have closed this hearing. Thank you, Mr. Dibb.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Are you all set tonight?
Yes.
Okay. Have a good night. Thanks.
Yeah, Raul's up for the rest. Thank you.
All right. Next up, Elizabeth Barry, trustee, Elizabeth Barry Family Trust, 111 Lucerne Avenue, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to reconfigure an unpermitted patio and install mitigation plantings. And for the record, Courtney is not on this quorum and Melissa is back in. Ms. Bergeron.
Thank you. I have promoted Raul back up to present the changes to his project.
Welcome back, Raul. You're up, sir.
Been a while. Good evening. Raul for the applicant representing this continued hearing. So this hearing was presented for after the fact improvements that were done to the project, to the property. So we presented the project to this board and there was some added comments and we continued to update the site plan to also take into account what was submitted for the abuttering property in terms of wetland resources, buffer zones A and buffer zone B. So if I could, I will start sharing my screen.
Yes, sir.
So the application has a few revisions. The site plan has several revisions. One of the revisions, starting with the simple one, there's an existing ornamental fence at this location. It's a decorative fence. The homeowners put it there to prevent the geese from accessing the backyard and using their backyard. So one of the comments at the first hearing was to note that this fence is to be removed. So that note has been added. Another comment was that there is an existing dog fence pen that was not shown on the plan. That dog fence was not existing when we did the survey of the site, but it did show up at some point. The dog fence is in this location. It's not a permanent fence. It's one of those fences that gets put in by spikes. Each section is about 5 feet in length, and it just gets spiked in. What the homeowners do, they let the dog out from the upper deck and the dog just makes his way down the stairs and it's enclosed here. One of the things that was required from the first hearing is that that portion of this dog fence that is currently located in the area that we're going to propose for mitigation to not be in that location. So we show this note that if this fence is put back, that that fence can now go into the mitigation area. Another note that was added, this existing paved driveway was resurfaced with pavers. So we added that note to account for that change that took place last year or a couple of years ago. Another change on the site plan, we had called Little Pond as land under water body. And at the first hearing, it was informed to us that Little Pond is land under a salt pond. And we had to make that revision to the plan and also take into account this buffer zone A that is associated with a salt pond. Originally, we have the buffer zone A cutting somewhere around this location. That was the 50-foot setback from the BVW. However, when we have a salt pond, the buffer zone A is 75 feet from the wetlands associated to that salt pond. So the wetland is still the same wetland, this BVW. And then buffer zone A becomes this line out here. So needless to say, all the after the fact improvements are all now located in buffer zone A. So that was revised to the plan. The coastal banks from the neighboring property were added to the plan. The plan that was approved for the neighbor just had a coastal bank and a beach in this location. None of those resources make a buffer zone A more stricter than the salt pond that we currently show. Another change we did, the original filing, we had the plan comparing what we had for, if I zoom somewhere up here, the mitigation table that we had was comparing what was filed in 2019 under an RDA, and then comparing it to the after the fact development. And it kind of got complicated. So after Jan's recommendation, we just simplify the whole thing and we just show what exists today, and based on the amount of pavement or patio that's being removed, so that we don't have patio moving closer to the wetland than the primary structure. We have a requirement of 1,032 square feet. I apologize, this number is a mistake. That was the old number that I forgot to update on the table. That is not an automatic number that gets updated. Unfortunately, that is a manual one, and I forgot to update that one. On the site plan, it is called out correctly. The 1,033 square feet that is proposed. Another simple change that was done was reducing the 7-foot path that we had proposed originally to a 4-foot path to access the existing beach at this location. So those were the changes to the plan. The mitigation plan, they got it bigger now to 1,033, accounting for everything in buffer zone A. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Thanks, Raul. Ms. Bergeron.
Thank you. My only comment, Raul, my pictures were less than helpful and I didn't make it back out to the site, but thank you for moving that tree over a bit. So just my generic language that to be sure that it's planted at least 5 feet off the property line and from any other tree and not directly underneath the tree. That's it. Thank you.
All right. Commissioner comments. Melissa.
Thank you, Jamie. Raul, you mentioned that the dog fence is was not there. It is there. It's not there now. Is it not there now as of this week? Or,
it is there. It is there. Last time I went to the site. When I said it wasn't there, when we did the survey,
okay,
the fence wasn't there.
Yeah, because obviously it's going up in the buffer zone A, and it's something that can be moved. So are they here year round, or are they seasonal?
I don't know.
Because it probably should be put down at some point if it's movable, and they're not around. So other than that, thank you for the improvements, and yeah. Okay, that's it.
All right, Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really have nothing to add. No questions, sorry.
All right. Betsy.
No questions or comments. Thanks, Raul. Thanks, Jamie.
All right. Raul, thank you for addressing all our concerns. Kevin.
No questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
All right. Maury.
I would just say that the dog fence, as long as it's out of the mitigation planting, all it is it's in a lawn, and I have no problem with that.
Okay. Ms. Bergeron, is there anything in the public chat function, please?
No, the only new thing is my comment about 0 Old Barnstable, so nothing pertinent to this hearing.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement.
Follow Hawk second.
All right. We have a motion and a second to close the hearing. Any other questions or comments? All right, seeing none, we're voting to close the hearing. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, I.
Maury,
Carla Hawks, aye.
Melissa,
Frog eye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. With this quorum, we have closed this hearing. Thank you, Raul.
Thank you.
All right, next up. Kevin and Kathleen Hanwell, 15 Grove Street, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to remove the existing deck, landing, shed, and stone parking. Construct a garage, porch, and addition. Install mitigation plantings. And the quorum excludes Courtney.
Oh, dear.
Yep, you get another coffee break. Ms. Bergeron.
Yes, Raul is here to present his third project of the night.
Frequent flyer. Mr. Lizardi, you're up, sir.
Good evening. For the record, representing the applicant, Raul Lizardi from Cape and Islands Engineering. This project was presented with this board a month ago. The project was revised to address some of the comments from staff, but most importantly to address some of the outstanding items that the current property owner was unaware of. Staff found out that there were some improvements that were apparently never permitted. So if I can share my screen, I will go through those.
Yes, sir.
So the revised plan addressed the mitigation calculations. We have now almost close to 1,500 square feet of proposed mitigation, all of which is 10 feet away from the proposed structure, located to the east side of the structure. For that, we're removing approximately 1,000 square feet of existing ornamental plantings and shrubs. All the trees that are in this location are to remain. And some of the items that were outstanding, staff noted that these improvements on the back of the existing house in terms of the rinse station and the paver patio was something that appeared sometime within the past 10 years, and the town has no record of this being permitted. Reaching out to the current homeowners, they don't know of when this happened. When they purchased the property, that was there. So for this calculation, we are calculating this portion of development in the B zone as if it was new development for the purpose of mitigation. Staff also noticed that this section on the existing gravel parking appeared to have been an expansion within the past 5 years. Again, the current homeowners were unaware of that. So that portion is being removed, but it is not being taken as credit of development for the purpose of mitigation. Another finding that came up about was that apparently in 2014, the owners at the time had asked permission to remove 2 trees from the property. Conservation approved administratively the removal of those 2 trees with the replacement of 2 new trees. The current homeowner does not know what happened, if those 2 trees were planted or not. There are smaller trees. There's a couple of small 2-inch trees at this location, but we don't know for sure if those 2 trees were part of that requirement through the administrative approval back in 2014. So we're not taking credit for them. What we instead are doing is, the original application had 2 proposed trees. We're proposing 7 trees now. 2 of those trees are to compensate for what would have been the 2 trees that we don't know if they were planted back in 2014 or not. The other 2 were the original 2 trees that we were proposing in the application. And then the other 3 is because there were some comments that for the removal of this oak tree and this pine tree, 2 trees was not enough. So we have 3 additional trees proposed for the replacement of trees that are proposed to be removed. So those are the revisions. There was a comment from staff about the area here, and we provided photograph of what this landscaping has been kept as. It is ornamentals, there's rhododendrons, there is some Russian olive, there's a lot of English ivy, and there is another woody vine that if I knew exactly what it was, I think it's bittersweet, but it's in the area. So all that is being replaced with mitigation plantings, except for the existing trees. The existing trees will remain. Most of the other area is existing lawn. So this portion is currently lawn areas. The lawn a few years ago used to blend through the 2 properties at this location. This has now some daylilies and other boxwood shrubs planted in the area. So that's the revisions to the plan. If there's any questions, I'll try to answer.
Excellent. Thank you, Raul. Ms. Bergeron.
Thank you. Just one follow-up question. Raul, thank you for clarifying what the planted area consists of. There is a note on the plan, an updated version of the note from last week where there was 500 or so square feet of ornamentals being relocated to the existing parking area. And now the note says that the existing 1,000 square feet of ornamentals are to be relocated. But I don't see a change on the plan. Are those proposed in the solid green section?
So yes, I forgot to include that on the plan, but no, the solid green is strictly mitigation plantings. So that area is going to be controlled by the order of condition, the trees that are proposed, and the plantings in this roughly 1,500 square feet is the mitigation plantings. The restoration of the ornamentals will be foundation plants. The 2 sections that we're removing, the 2 side stairs and steps to the west of the house, that area is going to be expanded with foundation plantings. The garage will be expanded with foundation plantings, but all of that is within 10 feet of structures. So none of that counts for any of mitigation. It's just going to be ornamentals.
Okay, I'm gonna think on that. Thank you.
All right. Commissioner comments. Steve.
I'm sorry, could you clarify that last ornamental issue?
So yes,
Pull the map up again if you would be so kind,
yes. So
please.
So for the purpose of opening up this mitigation area, this is currently about 1,000 square feet of ornamentals, excluding the trees, to be replaced elsewhere on the property. They can be within 10 feet of the structure because they're ornamentals. But none of this green, if I highlight the green, none of this green is to be ornamentals.
Okay.
This is all going to be the mitigation plantings and the existing trees and proposed trees. Something I will add is there was a few comments about in other projects about trees too close to the house. So those 2 trees, they may be relocated somewhere properly spaced within that area, since it may be thought that they may be too close to the existing structure.
Thank you. Now I understand. You'll find somewhere on the lot for their beloved ornamentals, right?
Right. So if it's foundations, they're within 4 feet of the foundation. They can plant it there. If it's along the back property line, they can plant it back there.
Okay, thanks. I'm clear.
All right. Betsy.
No questions. Thanks, Raul.
All right. Kevin.
No questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
All right, Maury.
No questions, thank you.
All right, Melissa.
She shook her head.
No yeah, no
Yeah.
questions.
Thank you. Ms. Bergeron, is there anything in the public chat function, please?
There is nothing in the public chat and no hands raised, and I just had one follow-up comment. Just a note, Raul, I'm not sure if the commission would be open to it or not, but should the designated mitigation area, we find that those 2 trees perhaps wouldn't fit or wouldn't be appropriate to plant there, I wonder how the board would feel about the 2 trees in the restoration area to be on the smaller side, maybe a dogwood or a magnolia. We see those occasionally. So just opening that up for comment if anyone had an opinion.
Steve?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I was slightly worried about putting the trees there and whether you'd have to train the species or something because of the shade coverage, but that sounds like a good solution. Thank you.
All right. Anybody else?
I'll make a motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement.
Carla Hawk, second.
All right. We have a motion and a second to close the hearing. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we're voting to close the hearing. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Maury?
Carla Hawk's eye.
Melissa?
Bartel guy.
Steve?
Pat and I,
It is unanimous. With this quorum, we have closed this hearing. Thank you again, Raul.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
That's it for the
Night,
Raul
Raul.
show.
good night.
That's it.
All right. Next hearing had been previously continued. Next was a request to amend an order of conditions. We took that out of order, so that's been taken care of. Brings us to request to extend an existing order of conditions. Salt Pond Areas Bird Sanctuaries, Inc., lots 4 to 11, Pondlet Place and Pierce Place, Falmouth, Mass., DEP number 25-3578, requesting a 1-year extension. And we welcome back Mr. Bird.
Thank you. So this 1-year extension, the staff is in support of. You guys might remember a couple years ago, there was a notice of intent before you for some of the parcels owned by Salt Pond in this general area. There are currently 3 existing orders of conditions / management plans going on all of these parcels, and Salt Pond is anxious to have them all under one comprehensive management plan. So you guys have extended one of these 3 management plans already. So we're hopeful you will consider this one so that next year when all 3 expire, you will see a brand new filing to control all of the lots in one notice of intent.
So moved.
Carla Hawk,
Makes sense.
second.
All right, questions or comments? All right, we have a motion and a second to grant the 1-year extension. There's nothing further. Seeing nothing, we're voting to grant the 1-year extension. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Maury?
Carla Hawk's eye.
Melissa?
Bartel guy.
Steve?
Pat and I,
It is unanimous. We have granted a 1-year extension. Next up, vote orders of conditions. Scott and Susan Goodrich, the Goodrich Family Trust, 61 Walker Street, Falmouth. Ms. Bergeron.
Thank you. So this is the parcel pretty close to Town Hall. There is an existing accessory dwelling in the back that they are proposing to reconstruct. An existing basketball court on site will be removed and that area regraded as lawn. And they will be adding some mitigation plantings. There were a couple unpermitted features that Tom Bunker addressed during his presentation and added mitigation for, or simply is proposing to remove. We did receive that revised plan.
Thank you. And I jumped the gun. Maury, you're not on this quorum. All right, anybody have anything, any concerns with this? Anything you want to see in there? All right,
A quick
Melissa?
question. Is this building, it's gonna be a garage with something upstairs, I believe. But I would assume then they access it from London Avenue, right? But it's awfully close to the wetland there. Do we have any way of preventing oil spills or anything like that? I mean, I assume it's gonna be on a slab.
It is noted that it's going to be on a slab, no crawl space. It's actually moving slightly further away from the wetland. I'm not
Question is
sure. It's,
access to it then, I guess. There's no sign of, driveway or anything.
Is it a
Yeah.
garage? How could you get into it?
yeah, we haven't
Mm.
seen any architectural, so I'm really not sure what it will be.
I believe
If
that's what
it's
the woman
any-
told me when I knocked on the
oh.
door. She said
Oh,
garage.
oh,
So,
okay.
so the question is, if that's the case, then you're gonna have to drive in somehow. And I would assume, I'm guessing that it would be from Glendon Road. But that means, I mean, we should,
They had to drive in, they'd have to come before us again because it would be in our jurisdiction.
If
And
it's
the
any,
porch,
yeah.
the
Go
porch
ahead,
is
Serge.
shown on the inside corner. So it's not,
Yeah.
not on the,
If it's any help, we will have to look at this at the building department level. So when I
Okay.
do see architecturals, if there is a
Okay.
clear garage
Drive.
door, I can reach out
Yep.
and ask them what their intentions are.
Okay, thanks.
anything else? All right, what
It's
do you
that
think?
historical marker was there too. They should,
That's for
incorporate
the
that into the
historical
plan.
board.
I'll make a
they're not gonna-
motion to issue an order of conditions as discussed.
Bird second.
All right, any other questions or comments? All right, we're voting to issue an order of conditions. Betsy,
Bob Pelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye, Kevin,
O'Brien, I.
Melissa,
Fragile guy.
Steve.
Pat and I.
It is unanimous with this quorum. We have issued an order of conditions. Next up, True Compass LLC, 179 BB Acres Road, Falmouth, Mass. And I show Melissa is not on this quorum. So you get a coffee break.
Too late for coffee.
I also
Irish
have
coffee,
Maury
come
not on
on.
the quorum.
That's not what I have.
She wasn't here last week when we closed it. Isn't that right, Maury?
Maury, do you remember?
Yeah, I wasn't there last week.
Okay.
You're right. I don't know why I didn't have that on my note. I think you should fire me.
So this project was the raise and reconstruct of a single family dwelling on BB Acres Road. Nothing really in particular to note that was really identifiable about the property other than when visiting on site, it was definitely a little overgrown. That was the property. So the staff had mentioned that they are proposing, many trees to be replanted, and right now it's a little difficult to tell if those trees are really being proposed in appropriate areas. So the staff would recommend that though they're proposing 12 trees, that can be condition to be determined after the house is constructed.
Agreed.
Yes.
And we discussed that, and that should be a special condition.
Anything else? All right,
Make a motion to issue an order of conditions as discussed.
Second, O'Brien.
thank you. All right, we have a motion and a second to issue an order of conditions. Anything else? All right, we're voting to issue an order of conditions with this quorum. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Courtney, you're
Courtney?
muted.
Bird eye.
thank you. Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Steve.
And
It is unanimous. With this quorum, we have issued an order of conditions. Next up, Constance M. Ryan and Andrew Doyle, 151 T-Ticket Path, Falmouth, Mass. And I show the quorum as excluding Maury.
Correct.
Okay.
So this project has been bouncing around for about a year. We finally have a plan before us showing some additional proposed revetment that merges into a section of fiber roll and then furthermore into a section of grading into the road layout that was expressed to the midpoint was owned by the property owner. Existing structures like the concrete wall and split rail fence on site are proposed to be removed. I did rewatch the hearing to make sure I expressed all of the cubic yardage correctly. Ms. Ricks mentioned that at the time of construction, there might be about 70 cubic yards of fill in order to do the bank and fiber rolls. As we know, the fiber rolls are typically covered by 6 inches of sand to keep them in place and to protect them from UV light. She was requesting about 7 to 8 cubic yards be placed annually. It was discussed at the last hearing that that should be decided on a year-to-year basis based on the movement of sand in that area because there is a problem of having too much sediment and shoaling in the area. That's all I have.
That's a lot. All right. Any comments, questions? Melissa?
In light of everything that we know about currents and sedimentology and sea level rise and climate change, how is it that Falmouth is still allowing new revetments to be constructed? I mean, here we are trying to pull down revetments in parts of town and groins and things like that. I just, yeah, I mean, it's at some point we've got to really look at the data and start learning to adapt. I'm a little more resilient and accept the fact that, I mean, gee, you know, this project might not exist next week if Willie wiggles a little to the west. So I think we as a commission, we need to start thinking about putting more armoring in town. You know, the philosophical and the geological components of it. And yeah, I at this point I don't mind repairing revetments that exist, but actually permitting new ones. I don't see a way. I don't see how it's a win for anyone, but perhaps that the current property owner. But that's about it. It's not a win for the town, for the environment.
All right. Anybody else? All right, what are you thinking?
I'll make a motion to issue an order of conditions as discussed.
Bird second.
All right. All right, we have a motion and a second to issue an order of conditions as discussed. There's nothing else. All right, we're voting on issuing an order of conditions. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, I.
Melissa,
Red Tug, no.
Steve.
At night.
All right, 5-1, motion passes. We have issued an order of conditions. Next up, Cobalt Partners LLC, 23 Spencer Baird Road, Falmouth, Mass. And the quorum excludes Courtney, Kevin, Maury.
Do we have a quorum?
There's still
We
four of
do.
us left.
There's 4 of us. Your vote counts. No, your vote doesn't count.
My vote counts.
Yep.
Steve's
All right.
vote counts.
So does mine.
All right. Ms. Bergeron. Electric, expensive bid.
Thank you. I am refreshing my memory. Yes, this was
This
a
is the-
request to amend.
But they asked us to amend it to put in to put in the electricity through the town triangle there, and now we learned last week that the electricity is actually going under Spencer Baird Road, so does that make this whole application a moot point?
No, that's not what the application was.
So the application that was put before you guys was to make some minor changes to the driveway, size of walkways and patios. So they have increased their mitigation area. They are no longer proposing the extra parking area in the town road layout that was removed. So thus we don't need the reinforced turf. They did go before the select board and got permission to apply with us for landscaping work in the road layout, but to move the fence, which they've done. One of the main components, as Melissa noted, was trenching for the electrical to the property. As we were made aware after the hearing closed, Cape and Islands and Horiuchi and Celine were unaware that Eversource had actually gone out and already trenched and chose the location to be under the road. We were provided photos and methodology. It was mostly directionally drilled. There was minor repaving that took place. So conditioning a revised plan to show the new and actual location of this trench would be appropriate, in addition to conditioning that pathway on the town property north to south that there were some concerns about, just conditioning that remain and is not revegetated or disturbed, and restoring the area where the trailer is currently sitting. But those were my notes.
I concur. Anything anybody else have? Melissa?
I noticed that on the landscaping plan, the address is actually wrong on the plan. They call it Gosnold Road and not Spencer Baird Road.
Got it.
Yeah, they need to update that. And does anyone have any ideas of something more native than hydrangeas to go in the
They're
road
allowed to
area?
have hydrangeas. They're allowed to have
In-
foundation plants that
The
are,
hydrangeas are going out along Gosnold Road. They're 30 feet from the house. They're in the A zone. They're putting hydrangeas along the road in the A zone where they're ripping out the existing quote unlicensed shrubs to be removed. They're putting them all along Gosnold Road. Right in the plan there's the house. and they're going up here, and there's Stony Beach right there.
Well, then you can require them to be native plants.
Yes, that's what I would like to. So hydrangeas there are no native hydrangeas? I mean, it's Chatham as far as I'm concerned. Okay, yeah, I would like to see native plants along Gosnell Road instead of hydrangeas.
Anything
And
anybody
where's the
else
scale
have?
on this thing? Where's the scale? I don't even see the scale.
I'll make a motion to issue an order of conditions as discussed.
Pat, second.
Anything else? Melissa, you good?
As long as we replace the hydrangeas and they actually don't make a pathway, I mean, they have this pathway that they wanted to cut. So Alyssa, you said that they've removed their request to bury the lines because the pathway that they had from the little fence out to the little pathway for the neighborhood was going to be where they were going to put the electric lines, so.
Yes, I would say that we should condition a revised plan that no longer proposes a trench there since it won't be.
Yeah, so they
Unless-
have on this plan a trench and they have the gate. So are we going to have them close off the new pathway that they want to?
Well, I don't see
But
why
then-
they can't have the little path from the property to the existing path, but there wouldn't be any disturbance of
Trenching.
excessive vegetation.
Right.
Okay. No trenching.
No trenching.
They might want to reconsider that pathway because it's yeah. Yeah. Because it doesn't make sense if they're not already trenching. But anyhow, because they're just gonna have to dig through more town property to make the pathway. I mean, we're basically allowing them to remove town brush.
We're not
Town
allowing them to
shrubbery.
do it. It's the select board has a license with them.
The select board said that they could do it if we give them permission to do it, but there's no need for them to do it anymore because they don't have to trench it anymore for the electricity. So why should we have them dig up perfectly established underbrush? For
But it's just to get to that other trail, right?
The other, right,
yeah,
it's an access.
Why
It's an
not allow
access.
that access?
but think about the location of the property. The whole property is access.
Public access.
Okay. It doesn't seem necessary. But you folks really want to keep that? I mean, I can't find the scale on this. Oh, on this map, but really want to cut a 15-foot trail in through town property for private use when they've got, I mean,
Town property is public access.
yeah, well, okay.
All right, we have a motion and a second to issue an order of conditions. Anything else? All right, we're voting for an order of conditions. Betsy,
Gladfelder, aye.
Matthews, aye. Melissa,
Okay.
Steve?
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. With this quorum, we have issued an order of conditions. Thank you, guys. Those last couple weren't the simplest ones we've ever done. All right, last motion. Who wants it?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Pat and second.
Gladfelder, aye.
Bird eye.
Matthews, aye.
O'Brien, aye.
Carlo Hawks eye.
Hi, Todd.
Pat and I. And
It
good
is
night.
unanimous. We have
Good night,
adjourned. Thank
everyone.
you, everyone.
Good night,
Good night,
everyone.
everyone.
Oh,
See you
Lee's a
next week.
no-show. Have a good one.
Yeah. I know.